There are a few rules around.
Okay, ready to bring the Lawrence Planning Commission meeting to order. We'll start off with Chris's and lead us in the invocation.
Loving and gracious God, be with us in our deliberations, and help us to be wise in the decisions we make for this present and not present time.
Okay, if we all stand, we'll do the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Linda Morrison, here. Christopher Spivey,
Here.
Eric Milam,
Here.
Chad Bennett,
Here.
Ruth Ann Jones, here. Joseph Flesh,
Here.
John Atkins.
Here.
Has everybody had the opportunity to look over the minutes from the last meeting? Any changes that need to be made? Do I have a motion for approval? Ruth Ann motion, second. John Atkins second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So moved. Okay, the first item for business is 202401-003. The request to rezone 18.8 acres from industrial district to PDD, Planned Development District, located on the southern corner of Broad Street, US Road 701, and Meadow Street, State Road S26-152. PIN number 186-00-00-0023. This is the second review. Yes.
So if you remember, before we had done an amended list of points that the applicant needed to address. They covered everything. Some of those notes were no action was needed now. It was just for the applicant's reference on it. They hit everything that we needed them to, and applicants here. Do you have anything to add?
We can get to it
As we go, okay.
So if you guys remember, for a PDD, it starts with a conceptual plan, just a kind of two-dimensional, some rough ideas. Once the planning commission is comfortable that the applicant has addressed the big ticket items, that they've addressed the required elements, from there, planning commission gives the applicant the go-ahead to put together the master plan. That master plan includes the specifics, includes example being regarding landscaping, include X number of trees per 100 linear feet. For access points, we'd be looking at more of the detail side of this. So there's a laundry list in the zoning ordinance that goes through the full list of what the master plan includes. I think the applicant is aware of what the planning commission is looking for. So I think staff is at a point where we're comfortable with what the applicant has put together. There's a few little items that we can discuss with the applicant tonight, and then that you guys have to add from prior discussion before you potentially send them to put together the master. That's where we're at in the overall procedure of things. Once the applicant puts the master together, they come back to planning commission, present its, cross all T's, dot all I's. At that point, that is when the planning commission would make a recommendation to council regarding the rezoning. So that's the next steps. Do you want me to talk the few things I had, or so.
Because one, if you remember in the notes, one of the big things was the allowable uses. With the PD, if it's not specified in the master plan, it's not allowed. So there, before they noted an existing industrial use, if that company was to ever go out of business, and the time lapse for it, you remember we had a rezoning because of a time lapse, they would be able to go back in. No industrial would be allowed, so that's why we haven't specifically caught every single allowed use in the industrial network, so that did get a little bit more in depth. The second access was added, which some of that is still subject to DOT approval with it.
Yes.
Our biggest thing was that we needed 2 accesses. So if DOT is okay with them having it there, great. If DOT says, well, you can have an access, but you can't have it right there, that's something we can go back and that's a small modification. As long as we're saying they're gonna have 2, DOT is gonna say where it can connect to that state road.
And DOT won't issue a permit, something like this, they won't issue a permit until the stormwater permit has been issued. So, for in essence, you'll be asking the applicant to get DOT's blessing that conceptually they can put the driveway there. We can't ask them for the permit because they're not going to get the permit until the design drawings have been approved by the various agencies.
Right.
So we're at a rezoning standpoint where the applicant has to work with the reviewing agencies to get their unofficial blessing to move forward, because this rezoning is based on conceptual design. Just get us back to
So kind of a little more example of it is we can say that they have to have 2 accesses, one coming in off of Sug Street and another coming in off of Meadow. They're showing us where it's gonna come in off of Meadow on that and say, great. DOT can go back and say, well, you've already got a driveway here, so you need to make that connect to it. Both of us are satisfied with it, so that's just a small modification that could happen, no big deal with that.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, as long as there's still an access on Meadow and an access on Suggs, I'm content with that. And based on discussion, that seems to be kind of how you guys were aiming to have the 2 separate.
And they did modify, for the other thing was the fire trucks, being able to make those turns. Because it's conceptual, the exact dimensions aren't shown on it. But it appears that it's more circular to allow fire apparatus in there. That was the main thing.
Yeah, I mean, the big ones were reuse, was access. One of the specifics that I'm looking at,
Open space and, you can only have so much of it water, which Chris and I talked about, and that appears they did go back and adjust that as it was needed on that. So I think we're good.
so the applicant right now, they're calling out a few different buffer types, a 15-foot and 20 foots.
Can I ask one bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
The second access, so is that one?
That's first access.
That's first?
So that's what they're wanting to be their primary access,
Okay.
which the other part with that was the legality of, are they allowed to use that with that? They did give a plat that shows where the, shared private drive that they're referring to, and the cul-de-sac ending on that side. So I feel that's sufficient, because it's not been, no survey's been done to remove that. So if they want to make that their primary, we're good with that. The access off of Meadow Street would be secondary. More so for for us, the city, public works, police, and. it
Well,
needed to-
So I guess kind of as we're talking about access points. I like seeing 2 full-time access points. One on subs as their primary and a secondary on Meadow. I say full-time in that when it gets down to the specifics on the master plan, to actually have state full-time access points. So that down the line, someone can't restrict access and cut off the Meadow Street access as emergency vehicles. I mean, if you're looking at 120 units, the current LORS regulations draws the line at 100. 100 units or more requires 2 points of access. So if they're looking at 120, LORS reg says 2. So my opinion, it should be 2 full-time access points. That's something that you guys can kind of make a decision on, that yes, it's 2 full-time, or they could pursue the secondary being emergency.
Well, I think our discussion with that was they would mostly be advertising the Slow Street
Gotcha.
as that. Both accesses would be accessible when needed.
Gotcha.
But, they're a pretty sign saying this is the apartment complex would be over on Slow Street.
So in working out some of the specifics to landscaping, I put a little quick sketch together if you want to look up at the screen. So based on where we know the existing ditches are. So there's an existing ditch that runs on this western property line and a smaller existing ditch on the southern property line. What I don't want to see happen is someone comes in and does a landscape buffer, and then you have top of bank on that ditch, then plantings, and then the back of those garages. Where those red lines are, I'd rather see a privacy fence. Now, fire code may dictate that they need to put a gate in that privacy fence so that if need be, they could get behind the fence and behind those garage buildings. But kind of at the core of it, provide that buffer, that screening, but minimize the encroachment to that ditch. Usually you're looking at least 10 to 12 feet from top of the ditch, so someone could get in there with a piece of machinery and clean the ditch out when it's needed. We don't want plantings right on, and then what do? Tear all the new plantings out and go in the ditch. So then kind of that same general thoughts on the southern property line. It's not much of a ditch, but there's something there, conveying some water. Instead of maybe having plantings down here, maybe we focus it between the pond and the rest of the facility. So there is, an essence of aesthetic value. Again, it would place there, you're gonna have that aesthetic value, but you're not gonna have it encroaching upon. So these are some of the specifics we're kind of now at where we can discuss so that the applicant can incorporate that into their master plan. Because again, with the PDD, unless the narrative on the PDD refers back to local ordinance, if the PDD narrative is silent, then it's silent. So we're trying to spell out some of these things that might seem very detailed now, but we're now at that stage where they, it's. So, yeah.
Are you saying that the ditches is on here?
I'll show you. So. Let's pulling up on screen is the digital elevation model for this area. The white is 100 foot above sea level or greater, and the light baby blue color is 80 or below, feet above sea level. So the project site is right in the middle here. I have the property lines on to show kind of where we're at. I'm going to turn the property lines off. So you can see, I'll even zoom in a little. The ditch on the western side is definitely a more significant ditch than the one on what I was calling the southern. The project site, all in all, is on a knoll. You can see the existing parking lot, the existing industrial building, all in all flows north-ish. And white is a high point. So you figure based on grading, based on the fact that their stormwater pond is in this bottom corner down here. Chris, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing they're going to kind of take this knoll and send most of it towards this pond. They also have a collection pond on this side. So there are two existing ditches that I just want us to be aware of when it comes to how the perimeter of the site is going to be landscaped and buffeted.
I think it would be better to do the, look at the alternative.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage, it's really just, and Chris, in terms of a narrative, it could really just be as simple as, privacy fence where landscaping would encroach too close to top of ditch. We don't necessarily need.
And tying the garages as part of that fence with it to make that
And
wall.
my general knowledge of building code, I understand you need 150 feet from the apparatus. So if there was a solid fence going down this entire line, from fire code standpoint, they would not be able to get to the back of these garages. So there may need to be a gate, maybe in this middle one.
Not bigger.
Just thinking about it. See it.
Okay.
So obviously you want to say something. Could you introduce yourself?
My name is Chris Joplin with Bolton Mink. Appreciate being here tonight. Just kind of going along with the comments. A lot of the things that we're looking at right now is very conceptual. We don't have a lot of the detail yet because we need to do the topo survey and kind of figure out what the real parameters are on this project site in order to determine kind of how to move forward with these things. I completely appreciate the thoughts on the buffers and stuff, and that's something that we'll definitely have to consider based on kind of what we find out as real conditions on the site. We just kind of went with the property lines, understanding the ditches. Right now, I couldn't tell you how deep the ditch is on the west side of the property. To kind of figure out what that buffer is. Right now, we're showing a 20-foot buffer. That ditch could be 3 feet. But we, as a landscape architect, I do take a lot of that stuff into consideration during design because I don't want plants in the bottom of the ditch, right? This is just not going to exist, and it's not going to be maintainable and all this stuff. Understanding if they're existing ditches, we want to make sure that they're easily maintained and we're not creating any obstructions or obstacles for those to be maintained. And we're talking about fences and landscape and buffers and stuff. We know we have to meet the requirements for the type B buffer and the type C buffer. But a lot of those constraints that we have on site are still yet to be determined. One of my concerns is just kind of looking at doing the buffer on the north side of the pond. Is that the pond could be an amenity that's a selling point for people that want to be in that space. And we'd have to look at what the type B buffer is and kind of figure out how dense that is because I want to kind of try to avoid kind of blocking that view.
Well, again, this is,
Right.
You don't have to do the type B buffer there. And that's kind of what I'm trying to point out is that this is a PDD.
Because our
PDDs are
Yes.
unique local regulations. landscaping of not a
Yeah,
private.
could be
fence.
trees, could be shrubs, could be turf grass,
Yeah.
could be something to provide it.
So
Because
like between the pond and the facility, it could simply be canopy trees, no bush, no
Right.
shrubs. You know.
Because the green line at the bottom, you see on that, the only area that we're required to do a buffer, the type B buffer is in that area that's hatched. That's kind of in that middle lot. Yep, right there. So on the right side, we don't need to do it. On the left, the right in the middle, that's what we need, the type B buffer. The other thing I wanted to add is we did modification around that driveway that goes around the south side of the east building. Just to kind of get out of that buffer, because we had shown that previous one.
Yeah.
So yeah, fences, shrubs, things like that, we definitely consider that during that. The next stage, once we have all that topo and everything, that we need to make those decisions.
And this is kind of as I led the planning commission, we're at that stage where we want to start the discussion before you get into specific details, so you're aware.
So it may, Chris may, this is what Tana pointed out, was if it's not something stated here, is referenced in our existing, so whenever we talk about the buffers ABC, is referenced how it is in our zoning ordinance for that, because that's, I think from our discussion, that's what you're going, right, is that type, which also provides for alternative substitutes to shrubbery, which is where we were talking about fences. So those can be used, as a substitute for certain buffers.
And a lot of times, if we find that we don't have the space for landscaping, we will go to the alternative of opaque fence and stuff like that. I don't like them because it's just opaque fence. But, you know, there's times that we need that, times that we need the screening, to meet the screening requirements.
So is there anything else from us on that? Have you talked with DOT any yet?
We have not had discussion with the DOT at this point.
I'm assuming you haven't already, part of the improvements to the drive to Suggs, you're gonna need to coordinate with IGA. Correct? Okay.
So when we get to, as I mentioned, we do the survey and everything, we'll understand what that existing drive access is behind that IGA. Figure out how it goes around the east side of the building, and then we'll marry in or make sure that that kind of, as we discussed last time, you know, kind of figure out how that whole interchange works, so it doesn't.
So if you can, you know, once you get the topo and, you know, the survey data, you know, illustrate what, kind of how the existing is gonna merge with the proposed.
Right.
And if it needs to be, you know, kind of just how that interchange is gonna occur, just so it can be clear. That this drive isn't going to have it's gonna not have a negative impact on IG's limits. And then the same for the drive going through the existing industrial park here.
Yeah, what we did for that secondary entrance is that we utilized the existing driveway that's in that parking lot. That already has an existing curb cut onto that.
I knew there was one somewhere close to it,
Yeah.
but I couldn't remember, because I usually use the other one, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and like I said,
Yeah, this, they did good at hitting the points that, the issues that we had before with it.
So the next step would be for them to do the master plan.
Yes, would be for you to, authorize them to move forward with doing the master plan draft for this project.
We need to make that as a motion.
Do the calls as part of that, whenever they get into the master plan part of it, do they need to call this out as a phase one? Because the commercial's future, it's not set. They're not doing the commercial, industrial, residential
so
at the same time.
technically, the applicant is showing us much more than they need to, which is great for discussion.
Mhm.
And it's great for kind of cutting things off that may crop up down the line.
Because they're only wanting to do this right now, so.
No, but they're creating the PDD for the entire.
Right.
Each one of these
Exactly.
leases.
Exactly.
So it's not,
Yeah.
when they submit for construction approval,
Right,
they'll submit, whether it's called phase one or whether it's called multifamily, you know,
and that's what I'm saying, is we kind
PDD.
of call that, yes, that construction part.
yeah, when they submit the construction, it wouldn't be the construction plans for the PDD, it would be construction plans for the multifamily within.
Yes.
Right.
So just to clarify, because I may have missed it at one meeting, so the property right now, the first phase is the apartment phase, or is there a phase to take down the old?
Right now, they are, so the request, the application is to convert it from an industrial zone,
Mhm.
which is very limited in terms of what uses are allowed,
Right,
to a PDD, planned district development.
Okay.
Where there would be a multifamily element that is roughly 40% of the property. There would be an industrial element, which is 40%, and a commercial element that's the remaining. The applicant has identified,
Yeah, we, basically it breaks down to 9 acres and about 9 acres and then maybe an acre.
Yeah.
Something like that. But the industrial building will stay in place. It'll still operate.
yes,
There's no
Okay.
discussion right now of it being demoed. It'll still be, operate as it is.
so I mean,
So if we look.
technically, the applicant could have submitted the request without any of the buildings up there, without any of the parking showing. And it would have been, it's more difficult to visualize, scale, and potential issues. And sometimes those potential issues can be a thorn in our side with a PDD, because it may be something that the legal language doesn't address because we didn't think of it, because we weren't looking at conceptual, and I'm saying we in terms of the applicant and but bare bones to get to, the master plan stage and even to the rezoning stage, they're showing more than they technically need.
Basically, it would be where those buildings are, think of that as, there's no buildings, and it just says residential. In the middle, where the building is industrial, and then that front corner up near 701 and Meadow is commercial.
Yeah, we're basically being as transparent as possible to show you what we're proposing and then kind of how we get access to the site. So we can have these discussions when we move forward in the master plan phase that we address these.
Other thing that was changed, just to note, was the building heights for the commercial. Initially said 75.
I think it said same
No,
as
it was
C1.
ours.
It was
I've
like,
heard of a same as C1, and I think C1 was 75.
no,
They're tall buildings.
they were
So
very, they were very
we brought
tall
that down
buildings.
to 50 feet.
So now,
Yeah.
we brought it back down to the existing
Yeah.
C1, I think,
Mhm.
which is 40.
Yeah, the height of the
But
apartment
it's
stays
C2.
in place, but the commercial, we realized with the size of the commercial lot that a 4-story building probably didn't make sense, so, as part of this PDD, we brought that down, that it was 35 or.
So it's a three-story building? Is it a three-story building? Yeah.
The multi.
Oh, the apartments?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so with the PDD, if someone came in with a commercial project and they needed additional acreage, it would be a major modification to a PDD. They would come back in front of the planning commission with a major modification and would go through the process, and you would review, okay, how's this increase in commercial going to impact the rest of the PDD? How's it gonna impact the character of the scope of the PDD? I would imagine based on where proposed commercial is shown, you could almost double it if the property owner had someone chomping at the bit for that piece of real estate. I don't see any major issues from planning, zoning, civil standpoint. But at this time, we're only requesting 20 thereabouts.
And slide 6 also is a screenshot of the table from the plat for the proposed dimensional standards for each district. With that. Yep, there you go. So that'll show you kind of your commercial, with that on. So that'll give you a little bit more different visual compared to our existing, which we're more used to. This sets its own, but it's still kind of in line with our existing, I think we said it was pretty close to the C2 requirements.
We do want, let's toss the industrial in. So we're calling it out as, well, I guess, okay. We can look at it two ways. We can, if we leave it as industrial is the same as existing, that is perfectly fine until the city changes the industrial in some way, shape, or form. Then Meredith would have to keep a copy of the current industrial on record, specific for this BDD. Or we can just have a line in the dimensional standards for the industrial, and that is what it is, period. I've had it happen with other towns where you have a PDD that references existing,
Mhm.
and then 20 years goes down and other things change. And then the question is, what was existing 20 years ago? And there's a scramble of trying to find out what was. Or we use something as simple as dimensional standards, just add a row and throw in what the industrial is.
Yeah, because just a note, looking at that, the minimum lot area for industrial is 20,000 square feet in the current zoning ordinance. So if you want to keep it that, I would say just throw it in with it, so there's no question. It specifically spells it out.
Anybody have any questions? So at what point do we make motions as far as going through approval for cleaning?
So the next stage would be a detailed master plan that's,
And that's what we were really talking about, it being more in-depth on that. Because I didn't know what we want to do.
and a lot of what they've talked about regarding, the site-specific data. So the master plan includes a landscape plan prepared in accordance with this ordinance, a topographic survey which illustrates existing elevation, the location of existing trees, other significant natural features. So this is the site-specific data. A real detail of the existing conditions to serve as the starting point for the detailed design.
That's a lot.
Yes. And a good portion of this they've already included. So a plan illustrating the proposed land use in each lot or tract within the development. They've already done that. They've identified commercial, industrial, and both of them. Your plan illustrating the circulation patterns of vehicular, pedestrian, and/or other traffic. You've already given us to the best of their ability, based on the information they've obtained so far, how that circulation is going to occur. Plan illustrating proposed community facilities and proposed usable open space. Again, based on the data that they have right now, they've incorporated that. Plan illustrating the location and specifics of existing and proposed utilities. That's, when they go out and do their field work, they're gonna find their manholes, they're gonna find water lines, utility poles, and start to identify, not necessarily the specifics in terms of, okay, we're gonna have X size manhole here, we're gonna have X size ball valve here, more so, where are they gonna get the sewer connection from, where are they gonna get the water connection from, where are they gonna pull the electric from. You plan illustrating the location and specifics of existing and proposed drainage along with the impact on adjacent properties. So again, we're gonna get that, site-specific information, figure out where existing drainage is. They already have an idea of their proposed drainage, the two ponds they're looking at. So a lot of this, they're already kind of, a few steps ahead. And I know Meredith is printing this list for you guys so you can see it. Chris, have you seen this list?
Mhm.
Is there anything, and you can still learn it if you need to look, is there anything that you feel the planning commission does not need to ask for?
No, most of the stuff that they're in there is things that we're used to and accustomed
Okay.
to and when, so.
I wanted to give you the opportunity to say, oh, no, we don't need that.
Let's just skip that page.
Well, are we looking at this in sequence, or are we going to get a detailed master plan?
The detailed master plan is next.
Okay.
So it may be one or two plans with all the information shown. One of the things that is a little unique with the specific requirements of the PDD in terms of the creation of the PDD is it talks about this master plan. And it talks about having all this information on the master plan.
So this is detailed in that on page 3.
Yeah.
The
When-
long list of them.
So once the master plan is adopted and approved by council, it gets recorded at Register of Deeds. The county ROD has the ability to scan in large files, but not everyone has the ability to print large files, to print large, full-size plans. So Meredith and I have talked about this, and we feel it can be helpful in terms of down the line pulling these legal, documents. That some of the narrative, some of the tables, yes, have it on the master plan, but also have it in a narrative form where it can be, printed 8.5 by 11, and it's the same language. Literally the charts that are up on the screen, you can just throw that in, an 8.5 by 11. This way, what gets recorded, you can have the plan, but you can also have the printout that's in 8.5 by 11 that's legible in terms of the legal document. So Mayor, I don't know if you, while you were making those copies, I kind of read through the first 7 or 8. The applicants,
Some of it's
for, like,
already
they're a few steps ahead.
Right.
And Chris indicated, to his knowledge, there is not a specific requirement that they feel they don't need to submit. So in some way, shape, or form, they're anticipating submitting, this information as part of the master plan.
Okay. Do we need any more information before we move to making a motion?
I'm not aware of any additional information needed at this stage.
There,
No, not right now. We talked minutes, we're comfortable moving forward with it, but address the concerns that we've had, we checked the way on our, what we have so far is needs it.
He gave me a head nod.
Okay,
Fine.
okay, he's behind me, so I can't.
Then we'll fix it. Fire? Yeah, I agree.
does anybody have any more questions? Okay, so do I hear a motion to request a detailed master plan from, okay?
Who did? Eric did.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, John gave a second. All in favor, say aye. Anyone opposed? So,
Very good.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're moving on to the second item. Okay, second item of business is PL dot 202405-02. Review of the minor subdivision Johnson. We have a representative, could you introduce yourself?
So I'm David Wellens of Johnson Wellens LLC.
Have they been to us?
Not this
No.
specific one.
Okay.
We just, last meeting talked about parcel that's
Right.
maybe
To the,
three to the,
or,
right there.
Okay,
We just talked about that one last meeting.
okay,
So now this one, these two, what they're looking to do is change the 2 into 3 on that. Just so you know, on it, whenever you're looking at the plat, it looks like Dawes Street Extension connects back over to Azalea Fiesta Drive. It doesn't actually connect. It's platted out on paper that it does, but there's,
Big old ditch.
yes, yes.
Well, it's not even just, I have that actually. So, when is going to change. So when the, here we go. Ignore the black lines, this is the free version. So this is the subdivision to the west, okay? Platted in 66.
Which is common for a lot of the areas that we have.
And if you look, there's this 10-foot reserved, okay? And take note, that follows the eastern side and the southern side of that development. I'm pretty sure it's not.
At some point it was turned into a grave.
Because there's.
So that's where the canal is, and that's probably where the canal was.
Okay,
The reason I'm leaning towards it may actually be reserved real property, and this is going off of, we have a more recent survey of this bottom right corner, which actually I don't have. I don't.
this is Dawes here.
So this is that bottom right property, which shows 10-foot reserved on the southern end. And what's telling is you have this 10-foot reserved area here. The property pin is on the western side of that reserved area, not on the eastern side. If the pin was on the eastern side, then it would, based on this information, we could look at it and be like, okay, it's clearly an easement. Because these lots that were subdivided in 66, it was a 10-foot reserved area, but the lot itself included some of that reserve area.
Is there ownership on it?
No. Horry County doesn't have it as a property.
And that's been that is a common thing too, is, whenever you look at something like that, where easements, roadways, they're not dedicated to any entity. It's a lot of times it's interpreted that the person that subdivided it still owns that person could be dead for decades now. So that comes back into kind of that title ownership thing. We ran into an issue, over on Church Street, back over in that area with it, and it's where some of these subdivisions, they were platted out 60s, 50s, 60s. They weren't required to do it then. A lot of these roadways have been acquired by the state or county through how long they've been maintaining them. So that kind of said, it's almost like a squatter's right. I've done it for so long, now it belongs to me. This section happens to be one where that's not been the case.
So what that comes down to is, and Meredith and I have been kind of going back and forth on this. If that reserved area didn't exist, we felt we really should have the discussion of connecting Dawes Extension to Azalea Drive. I don't know if that's even something that is feasible, seeing that 10-foot reserve strip. David, unless you're aware of any, so we're thinking right now it's a paper street. It's an unimproved paper street. A public entity never accepted dedication, which means it's a private right of way.
And we ran into that same discussion. I think your son was at that meeting with us, or where those new houses have been built.
Please, there.
Yes.
Yeah, right there. So the pavement for Dawes ends right about here. So what the city, from the city standpoint, from right there back around to this one and this one would be privately maintained, privately built access easements that were already existing. The city, county, and state have never maintained anything through there, which would fall back as private.
So
everybody that uses the road for access would share in the cost of, there's no shared driveway agreement, but I guess.
theoretically,
Does it?
that's how it should work. And probably when those, it's one of those coulda, woulda, shoulda scenarios.
Right.
Legal documents should have been incorporated with this minor plat to make sure that, a POA was established to at least contribute, some sort of legal mechanism where funds would be collected to contribute.
But we're talking, it was originally created back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, how's the street listed on those old plats? What was the map?
It's like right on this new plat, it says Dawes Street Extension, 50-foot public.
Yeah, but a public entity has never accepted dedication.
Right, and that was actually one of our notes.
And typically, a public entity won't accept dedication unless it's built.
So once he's got the road built, they can take it over.
If it's built
You
to,
or anyone else, I guess.
if it's built to public road standards,
Yeah.
the city would be in a position to accept it into dedication.
And that was part of that text amendment
Yes.
as well. So
So,
it falls back in line with county and state. We did it based on that, where it's gotta be up to those standards before
I got you.
anybody's gonna accept it.
so the concern that we have is how many new units should be allowed on an unimproved roadway without plans to make improvements. So a private access easement, which requires, I believe, a 20-foot wide travel lane, and it could be 6-inch gravel or 9-inch coquina. So that's in terms of a private road, that's about as minimal as you can get. A private access easement can be used for up to 10, I believe. And we are at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dwellings. 8 existing dwellings are utilizing a private unimproved road.
Yeah, one is still, fire 150 feet, is
Correct.
gonna have cul-de-sac,
Yes.
which
So
is also what ours saying.
theoretically, the T intersection could act as a turnaround if need be. So theoretically, if this was built and Dawes Extension and whatever we just named this not too long ago, I can't remember. If
Named
that,
it Watson, but there was already a Watson, so I think you went
It's
back and called it
Crawford.
Dawes Street Extension.
We did it at
It's-
Crawford.
yeah.
The strip just in front of the 2 lots in red, we still show it as Dawes Street Extension. That we've not done anything with. The other one,
yeah,
there.
that's
That's
we
what was
did
changed to
as
Crawford. Now, those 2 lots total 235 feet, so if that is not connected to Azalea Fiesta, is a cul-de-sac turnaround gonna be required?
So it's usually 150 from, so you usually have to get to the property.
Okay,
And that 150, I will let Wayne correct me, there's some leeway. The 150 is to minimize how much a fire truck has to back up.
Yes.
right,
So I believe the local, building inspector, fire chief, whatever the title actually is, can allow for some wiggle with that.
Yes,
you can. Whereas it wouldn't be required a cul-de-sac here and a cul-de-sac here
Mhm.
in addition to that T, that they could utilize that T as their means of turning around.
okay.
Again, with this discussion, we're under the assumption that there's the minimum.
It's not
built to
really
the
a
minimum
dead,
standards.
it's really not a dead end.
Yeah, with that
It's not a dead
intersection,
end.
like,
You can back all the way out and back into that street
Yeah.
and go forward.
Okay.
So
the
it's not
code is
really
in
a
place,
dead
so, think of cities or, suburban areas where, a fire truck potentially have to, S-curve their way out of a, shopping complex, so to speak, it's like, it's.
Not done that, try, seriously. Bebop training is fun.
So we're kind of at that stage. We were hoping that they could connect to Azalea. I'm not comfortable having you guys make that as a, something for the applicant to pursue, just based on what we're seeing with the old plats. Now,
That may be something to determine and come back with. or-
so the thought was, one of the thoughts, again, we kind of had to adjust as we pulled additional information. One of the thoughts was connect to Azalea for these 3 lots or improve from Dawes. The idea being that this subdivision wouldn't be adding to the number of units, the number of lots utilizing on this road, if it had a connection to Dawes, or if it had a connection to Azalea. Yeah, but it would be theoretically, so if that 10-foot reserve strip didn't exist, it would be substantially cheaper for the applicant to put in a small 20-foot wide travel lane, their 250 feet of frontage, than it would be to go from the intersection of Dawes and Blake and Blanton up and over.
Yeah, because you're talking about, as far as what he's referencing improving would be from where the pavement ends, so this whole part back to here, which is not cost efficient for the applicant at all. It would be costly, cost-wise, it would be more feasible to connect there and have another, have that loop, leave this existing like it is, and then just do improvement needed there in that connection.
And when you say improvement, and you're talking about the applicant doing it, which is me, are you talking about the specs you just said with 9 inches of base or whatever you said a minute ago?
As a
Or I could just
private,
go out there and spread some coquina base like we did in front of these 5 we built to spruce up what was already there and just bring it around the corner to access the 3
David,
lots.
you've been there more recently than I have. What from the strip right in front of those? What is it? Because I know the
It's
gravel
pretty grass.
is somewhere right there.
It's grass. It pretty much ends where it
It's showing
shows,
there?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's grass and it's, pretty wet, right? It can get wet in that area right there, but my intentions, if I had to do anything, I was hoping y'all would come in here and say, y'all getting ready to put the street in. Like I thought might could happen, but, seeing as how that's not gonna happen. I would propose just putting some coquina base right on around the corner out all the way up to the ditch. I don't think it would be cost prohibitive to connect it to that road with it. I think that, sir, you said the ditch is 10 feet deep. It's pretty big.
it looks like a big
Yeah,
one.
it's a good canal.
Full size.
So it'd be pretty expensive to put a culvert there and 20 feet worth, and I don't think I'm interested in doing that.
The city would appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yeah.
Another question is, which one I'm trying to remember, Scott, I've been there a bunch of times.
Yes, you have. All right,
Which way is that draining? Is that not going back?
So it's
No,
draining
this
towards,
one-
it's draining toward
No.
Walnut Street. Right.
it
Yes.
comes,
Water flowing in that ditch flows south.
Mhm.
Everything flows south into this.
Yeah.
There's your high point. White is the high point.
There's a ditch that runs behind
the,
the lots on Blanton Street that runs out to the
right
left.
there, that's the lot that you and I bought, to the back, to the rear. Because that's right there
We just built a house
is the
there.
house they just built. And that's the empty lot that you and I tracked through.
That's for the man.
Yes. Yep. That one is right there. Yes, yep, right there. That was where we walked to that and saw
So
the
there
town
is a
right there.
ditch down this side, there's a ditch back side, which it wasn't never maintained, it's grown up and all that
Right.
stuff, so it doesn't flow very well.
Mhm.
That area has a lot of flooding issues.
And that's
And a lot
That's
of
why
others
it's
make
ditch,
that.
in the comp plan, this is
But
gas
there's
and
also
swamp.
the big
This
ditch.
is
There's
There's a ditch that
Right
flows
down the
under the
side.
street, under the hall, there's a catch basin that comes into the.
Oh, yes, sir.
too, I think, yeah.
It's where I worry more about drainage than I'm
Probably not.
building
We have a
anymore.
lot of.
But there's no easement.
Right. Well, there is an easement, it's just not ours.
Correct,
to
it's not a
do.
public.
Right.
So
You talking about an easement to maintain the ditch down this, the whole side of the
So-
property that's in question,
On,
right there?
I don't know if one exists.
Well, I could provide an easement. I think there's room, if you're talking about 10 feet, would certainly be within the setbacks. If you needed an easement down that.
Yeah.
Right.
David, were you with, Nathaniel whenever, as far as walking,
Wouldn't you-
where those points are?
What
So-
was that?
All right, so this property corner is not,
It's in the ditch.
it's in
I'm
the
pretty
ditch,
sure.
or is it at the top of the bank?
Well, I don't know for sure.
Okay.
And I haven't been out there to see since he put the stakes, but
Okay.
I'm guessing.
that
it's-
says ditch, so it's at the top of the ditch or possibly, I think this dotted line is the ditch.
Yeah,
And it's in the ditch.
yeah. It's low.
Midway the ditch.
Okay,
This dash line is probably
Is-
top of ditch.
top of the bank on that side.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Y'all saying that is a canal ditch, basically.
Oh, yeah,
sounds
it's-
like.
Yeah,
a
it
good
is,
one.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a good one.
And that's why we made that lot a little bit wider than the others. So we could have a little more room, one, to keep the house off the ditch. We'll build the house as far right as we could. To have more room between the house and the ditch, and if an easement's needed, I wouldn't have a problem giving the easement if y'all would pay that road.
You know?
Well, I thought I'd ask.
And I'm not even,
I still might do
I don't even have any authority to speak on the city's behalf.
The text amendment says no.
Well, I think it's odd that there's roads, but they're just never gonna be anybody's road, it's just gonna be private
Because
forever and ever.
it was platted that long ago.
Right.
I can sue you this, buddy. It is not the only one in the
No,
city of
not
Lawrence.
at all.
I went
I went to
looking
one
for
day
one on
before
this side of
yesterday.
town one day, and that road wasn't even there. It showed on the map, it wasn't there,
I
it was.
think I know maybe which one you're talking about, or two.
I can't remember the name of the road, it's
Off of
right over
Walnut
here,
Street.
that cuts around, and
Mhm.
there's a couple, there's deeded lots that have no road to them.
Yeah, there's a canal that's cutting it off too, yeah.
Go down Cox and Dinkler.
Yeah, that's,
You go to
that's
the,
another
you
one.
go down Cox, you get to Dinkler, you can go left or right. So the first lot on the left, there's a drainage ditch that comes across there, comes under the road, pipe comes out, and the next lot, and then that whole lot, somebody has filled in, and there is no drainage, period. And it's a mess. These private things are, ugh,
They really are.
they are a disaster.
So-
I mean, you have to,
Projects.
Okay.
private don't
Here
work
for that. Period.
unless you got an HOA.
So,
So how do I have, I guess my deed shows that I have an easement through there?
You have
Or-
access
you have legal rights
to
in
these.
through a private right of way. So you can legally get there. There's just no way, since the road was never built, there's no way for a fire truck to get there. And at the end of the day, we're gonna lean on, providing public safety in terms of, fire protection and ingress egress. So this is a year ago, this was March 23, before the units were built.
That was 2 of the 5.
Yes. So the question then becomes whether or not the planning commission wants to entertain. We're gonna have to draw a line in the sand. How many units are we going to allow before this needs to be paved or before substantial improvements are made? It's technically already over what's required, or it's technically already over the threshold. The planning commission does have the ability to grant relief from land development regulations. I don't think you guys technically have an application for it. No, it is not something I would like to have us do on the fly. Even if we all 100% support it, simply because I would want to make sure that the record kind of showed the discussion, and showed kind of the reason behind it, and staff could have some time to kind of run the numbers. If that's something you guys could see entertaining, then the applicant is willing to kind of pause for a month while we can kind of compile this data, run some numbers, revisit it next month to see if, as a board, as a commission, you'd be willing to allow the creation of additional lot, which would add to the number of units on a private road with minimal improvements. You can also, it's up for kind of discussion, kind of the idea of, from a fire code standpoint, it's typically what, 20 foot wide
Yes.
travel lane?
And regardless, I'd like to.
Is that what's there now, you think? 20 feet?
I don't know, that would be some information we would need from you.
No.
It doesn't look like 20.
Yeah.
20 is minimum from fire code. 20 is the minimum on an access easement, but at the end of the day, I like leaning on fire code. Because it's zoning, whoop-de-doo, at the end of the day, we want a fire truck to get there.
Right.
Well, if I have to go in and do all that improvement to the road, then I'm not able to do that for those 3 lots, even if it was 3. So if that's gonna be what I have to do to the road, then I'm just assuming pull my application, I'll move on to something else. But I can't take it on myself to improve this whole road and make the turn for 3 lots.
Right.
And that's kind of why we're having the conversation, you know. If it was,
I don't think that's fair to me when all those other people live back there.
but you're adding a lot,
Sorry?
you're adding a lot.
Yeah.
You could pursue the 2, because those are existing.
Well, if you go back to the other spring, there was a lot that got subdivided. He took 1 and created 2 right on the, at the end of Dawes. Should maybe talk to him about it. The man that took the 5 lots, when we built the 5 houses, you know, they subdivided that and made 5 lots then.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
You've had all these opportunities to get this off before now, so it shouldn't fall all on me.
Well, what has changed since then is the city adopted a text amendment where the specifics of an access easement were defined. A private road was permitted and defined. And that occurred within 6 months thereabouts, 9 months.
Okay.
So that is kind of what we're leaning on, is the city now has new information, new regulations, new types of access, legal access that's available.
Who actually maintains that road now? I mean, do you maintain that road?
I made it look a lot better because I built 5 houses there and we sort, during
Not
construction.
city, county, or state.
Yeah, that's what I was just curious. I mean,
Right.
somebody's got to continually redo that road.
I went in there and put some base material on it and got it looking good after we built the 6 houses actually.
Clean the ditches out. Clean the ditches
Clean the
out.
ditches out.
You've done a good bit. I'll give you that now. I'll give you that. You've done a lot. It looks a lot better than it used to.
Whenever we had that discussion, About that
It's
part?
not your responsibility either.
was there any discussion, and I may have already asked you this, was there any discussion on getting that shared maintenance agreement?
Well, you had mentioned that probably is what ought to be done. I think it would be really hard to go back now and get
Right,
Mr. Watson, who
right,
thought he owned the road at one
Yes.
time and denied us even access and dug
yes,
trenches in
that-
front of our
yes, that,
driveways, but he's good now. He's probably be the easiest one to work with, me, but the other, 5 that we've sold to.
so you didn't get anything on those?
I didn't never.
They built that because they didn't want a homeowners association or.
But it can be done as a POA, it can be done, it doesn't need to be an HOA.
It's after the fact, they've already bought it, and it's hard to go back and, I don't think legally I could go back and do that.
Legally, no, but it can be asked.
Well, I think y'all would do it. Easier for y'all to get it done than me.
It's a private road. Well, the ask would be the planning commission requiring it prior to the creation of additional lot.
Right,
And then it's up to the applicant, whether it's you or someone else, it's up to the applicant. And it may still be an issue come the next building permit that needs to get pulled. In terms of, if it is one of these lots, whether it's one of the 2 in question or one of these additional lots further down, the question's gonna be brought up of how are you going to provide the minimum access for a fire truck? And if they can't, then a permit doesn't get issued.
Okay.
Mayor, just so I understand, the wire is not crossed. if it stays as 2 lots,
It's existing.
it's existing,
It's
we're not even.
He can build it anywhere, he ain't gotta do nothing.
Right.
You can build it as long as it satisfies building permit requirements in terms of providing access to that lot.
As long as Wayne tells me that there's no fire code concern, which is the code that will bite you really bad. It's existing. It's existing lots of road.
The question comes about because he's creating an additional
Yeah.
lot.
So he doesn't have. to
David,
do
are you
anything
serious
about
about giving the easement for the,
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with the easement for the ditch to be maintained. Wouldn't have a problem.
what's one of our biggest problems in Loris?
it.
What
It's
is
the
it?
easement.
Right.
It's easement and it's flooding.
If you give them the easement, how long would it take them to get started
I
on?
think sometimes you have to give a little.
Well, that's,
Remember, it's only gonna be.
That's me
easement to their
now, I'm just
property, too.
thinking off.
Yeah, I know, I know, that's-
So if you clean out everything there, but you don't have anything past it, then you're just creating a pond that it's gonna stop right
But
there.
evidently that's a canal ditch, right?
And it's, yes.
So if we get an
That's what
easement all the
I
way
want
to
to.
the canal ditch,
Mhm.
is that not what we're getting or what we're talking about, or am I
so
lost?
the only thing that's on the table is the eastern half of the ditch
Mhm.
along here
Mhm.
and the southern half of that ditch. And what Meredith's kind of mentioning is, since we know this ditch runs south and then west, you can clean this out perfectly fine, improve capacity, then once it hits here,
It's gonna stop.
it's gonna bottle all up.
So you're saying this is running this way and that way? Or is
Yeah.
it that way?
Going down and then turns behind the lots
South.
of face planting.
And west.
Okay, give me a sec.
It's kind of did.
It does, it does, it's like, whoa, hold
So
on,
here,
hold on.
here we are, we're over here at City Hall, okay? This ditch runs here, here,
You can about
and
see, it.
then right up here.
You can about see it in the trees too.
Yeah.
Through there.
That's
You can
called
also-
canal.
That is the one, the really big one, just over there.
And I believe it goes behind those 5 houses we built and goes under the road. There's a catch basin on Dolls that goes somewhere into
That
the
I think
ditch.
drains into it, yeah. Yeah. Well, you can see the ditch, so the elevation data that's being shown, Horry County flew February 2023. So this is the newest elevation data that exists in terms of an elevation model.
But when I got the permits to build those houses, that ditch was there, and I called over here, talked to somebody, and asked them if the ditch had to stay. They told me no, and I felt it was best to keep it, so we kind of rerouted it from where it was, so it would come right on the property line. And we left it, but it was a non-jurisdictional ditch. It didn't make much sense to me, but we cleaned it up, redefined it and made sure it stayed there, which I think helps the landowner behind those 5 houses.
So today, we're talking about the 2 properties in that northeast corner. If an application was submitted for those 5 lots today, improvements would be required.
Right. It would not be subdivided without.
Well, I'm
And
glad we headed that off when we
the
did.
stormwater permit would have been required.
Yep. Which was, what was that, what would I have to do for that?
Likely just erosion sediment control, unless you're exceeding an acre. So DHEC defines land development activity, it includes a subdivision. They define a subdivision as the creation of 2 or more lots. So the creation of 5 lots would be a minor subdivision in terms of a platting action. But anytime you have the, topography where you need to create drainage conveyance that runs across multiple properties within Loris, that then is deemed a major development, a major subdivision. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to jump through the full, as if you're doing like a 50 lot. It's a smaller process, or, smaller civil plans, but still at least basic grading to show how, that minor subdivision is going to grade. That's one of the things that kind of came up with this development. So if the whole access discussion aside, my recommendation to the planning commission would have been that any approval on the plat would have been conditional on DHEC issuing an exempt letter stating that the subdivision and the development of the 3 buildable lots would not exceed an acre.
I lost you there. I'm sorry.
So with minor subdivisions.
Yeah.
If you subdivide and all of your homes are going to be right near the road, you don't need septic, so your area of impact, your disturbance area is really tight.
Yes.
You can do 5 to 7 buildable lots depending on lot size without exceeding an acre. It's physically possible to do that. The exempt letter, pretty much you present the information in DHEC, and DHEC looks at it and says you are going to disturb an acre or you're not going to disturb an acre based on the information you're providing. If these 3 lots were built and the homes were near the road, homes certainly are under an acre. If the homes are in the middle of the lots, I don't know. So without seeing where the homes are going to be positioned, without seeing grading for the homes, without seeing, grading for driveways, staff and planning commission, we're not in a position to say, yes, you're going to exceed an acre, therefore we need to see grading and drainage. What the planning commission can ask or put as a condition is, yes, we'll approve this plat as long as the information you provide to DHEC indicates that you are going to not exceed it.
You're making it kind of complicated.
I'm following state statute.
Well, I go all over this county and do minor subdivisions and don't have to provide all that, it's less than 10 lots.
That's not true. I
In
use
the past, that's what we've done. Did this just come about too?
I came from Orange County, and I fully understand what Orange County requires for a minor subdivision. And you can no longer just record a minor subdivision with a plat.
If it's less than 4 lots, you can, right?
We don't have.
So this isn't Orange County, this is City of Loris.
I know where I'm at,
The
sir.
City of Loris Planning Commission has some additional authorities based on their local statutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So instead of requiring the applicant to show that they're not going to disturb an acre, what we have done in the past is conditionally approve plats as long as DHEC issues a exempt letter.
Okay, so I think we had a discussion about this. We at the point where we need to table this, or do we need to?
That would be up to the commission if they want to table it for more information and come back with, or if they want to do any type of conditional approval based on the certain findings. That would be your decision. If y'all have any questions with it. Whenever, I will say this, whenever we're dealing with streets that were platted out forever ago, we do have issues with them, whenever it comes to access to, just like with the previous one, where we were questioning, okay, just make sure that this shared private drive, that you do have legal access to use it, and is having that documentation, so things that have been platted out in the past have been kind of difficult dealing with.
Okay, so
Go ahead and read it this way. So, as it stands, would there be access to the lots if we could prove that?
So the issue at hand is not legal access, physical access. Legal access they already have,
Yeah.
based on a right of way that was platted in '70s. Okay? So they have legal access. But we require physical access. If it's, so physical access can be as small as a shared private drive, which is, very minimal requirements. It's really basic requirements from fire code. The next stage up is a private access easement. That's the 20-foot wide travel lane with either 6-inch gravel, 9-inch coquina. So that's kind of like your really bare bones private road, private shared driveway scenario. Next step up is a private road. Any private road needs to be built to city, county, state standards. It requires that much so that when or if the owners of that private road want to ask the local jurisdiction to take ownership of it, the city would have the documentation and would have the inspection reports to look at it and say, okay, this was built to our standards, yes, we can take it. So a private access easement, which is that 20-foot wide, can be utilized for up to 10 lots. This subdivision, the original subdivision and kind of where it's at today, already exceeds 10. So it's already, we wouldn't allow it if it came in today and they wanted to do this. The applicant is trying to add an additional lot. So that's kind of where we're at, where technically it needs to be converted to a full private road because it exceeds the maximum for the private access. And I fully recognize where the applicant's at. 3 lots, there's, if they were doing, at some point they would cross over that price point, so to speak, of, okay, yes, we can do these, these improvements.
I didn't have a clear picture of that in the discussion. I was wondering if all I had to do was just add on, driveway.
That would depend on, that would depend on if this is 20-foot wide,
Yeah.
6-inch gravel or 9-inch coquina. I would feel comfortable seeing you provide that relief. So there would be a request for relief from the applicant to utilize the equivalent of a private access easement in excess of 10 lots. That's kind of where we're at.
The thing is, we don't have the ability to do that today.
No, because we don't know what that is,
right,
and
exactly.
the applicant has unofficially indicated that they may not entertain improving it from this intersection here at Dawes and Lenton all the way up to there.
I think at a minimum, it might be best to possibly table for further discussion with the applicant. And come back to them, if David, if you wanted to withdraw.
If I'm gonna have to improve the road that's there and create the rest of the road, then it's not gonna work. And I'll just, my deal of buying the property is contingent on this being approved.
Right,
So if y'all wanna deny me, then I've got an out of the lots and I'll move on and they improve the road if they're gonna build it. And I'm not gonna do it.
I would like to touch base with the city attorney on that, because it would be different if he was creating a road.
Right.
It'd be a completely different story and probably, honestly, would probably be a lot simpler. But whenever we're talking about something that's already there, what can legally be required from something that was platted out and
So again, this is.
For the most part, you can drive to it, but it's grass that you're driving on.
But he's adding a lot,
Right,
and that's kind of the question, that's,
so,
the key to it is that he's
right.
adding, it's not the discussion of what does he need to do for the existing two lots.
Right.
In that case, it's entirely building.
So I still think that it's probably have the city attorney just have eyes on it.
I think it's,
So are you in a position to sit for a month and wait till we get done?
I don't wanna do that to the seller. I mean, I could,
Yeah.
the seller, you know, I'd have to ask for an extension with them, which I'm sure they grant it. They're gonna be stuck having to figure out what to do with their property. If I can help them do it. My deal here was contingent on me getting 3 lots. And my thought was I'd go out there and put some coquina base to access the 3 lots, and that was as hard as it would be, but it's turning into a whole lot more complicated. I've lived all my life without those lots. I can keep living without them. I don't have to have them.
And
But,
David, I can probably get that over to the city attorney within the next couple business days.
Yeah.
Because we would have a city council meeting on,
Well, I think for you to legally back out, you need a formal denial. Yeah, like, I'm just.
Probably so, but I mean,
Because Meredith, I see entirely where you're coming from.
right,
I think we could agree it'd be easier for you to step out if there was a formal denial.
well, I was just contingent on me buying it and getting the 3 lots. So if you say I can't get the 3 lots, then I've got it out for sure. But they also were going to understand that I shouldn't have to pay, create the road.
right.
Anybody would think that. I hope y'all understand that too. I mean, it's not fair to any one landowner there to have to create the road. Or even maintain it, in my opinion, but it is what it is.
Sure, we're good.
Yeah.
We got this timing. Someone very well, you guys are welcome to make a motion.
okay, so do I hear a motion from the group
To
to deny or to table it? That's what it is.
To make the motion to do whatever. Prove it, deny it, get more information.
Right.
You're making the motion, so.
The applicant has the time to wait.
I can take the time to wait if you need time to figure out what
I
I'm
think
gonna
we're
have
gonna
to
get
do.
more information.
But if it's gonna boil down to me having to improve that road, the numbers just don't work.
And that's where I think.
So I don't wanna waste my time, your time, or the seller's time holding them up any longer if I'm gonna have to fix that road. I just can't do that.
Is there something that would change that? I mean, you know, this is what it's gonna be, so if he needs to withdraw, well, then I know it would wait 2 or 3 months. Because if we can't do any different,
Based on the existing regulations, I don't see how we create an additional lot without improvements. Improvements of some sort.
And that's where it's just, I would feel better touching base with the city attorney to confirm what improvement, if any, is gonna be required for existing street if we're adding another lot taker. Because he's not creating the street.
Okay, so
Motion to table for a month.
do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Uh,
Anyone opposed?
Who seconded?
Check. Okay,
Thank you all for your consideration. I'm
okay.
gonna be in touch with you and let me know what I need to do.
Yeah, I'll get with you tomorrow and we'll talk on it.
Great, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, good to see you.
Staff report.
Okay, so thank goodness there's not much. Just again reiterating, I did get confirmation with Mayor Suggs as far as the reappointments, because I know I've had that on there for the last couple of meetings. Council would rather wait until their June meeting to do the reappointments because the term expiration is June 30th. So, we've got John and Christopher up for reappointment. If you want to attend, the council meeting will be June 6th at 6 o'clock. City council referred the comprehensive plan to the council subcommittee. They met Monday. I think they're gonna have one more discussion on it before it goes for first reading and full council discussion. So we've not gotten the first reading yet, but it's still, it's not sitting still. Again, we'll talk about annual training once we get that term expiration date. So last half of the year is when we'll probably end up doing the annual training. And then our regular planning commission meeting will be June 27th.
You got any feedback from any of the council members in relation to the comprehensive plan?
Yes, actually, and it's very minor. So we talked about, let's see, we had the Gaskins branch, and then we had, and then the first draft was referring to the Gaskins branch and Fox Bay area. And we changed that to the Gaskins branch and the Juniper branch. All right. One council member requested that we go back and put the commonly known areas in parentheses by them. So
Sure.
just,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how we'll tag the other one, but that was really the only comment that I've had so far. The city attorney talked with him on that Monday before and after that meeting. He's going back to look through, but he thinks that it's actually very thorough. And actually created more flexibility. The recommendations in it create more flexibility whenever it comes to our zoning ordinance than we currently have, that's the issues that Tom and I bring into nonstop. Yeah.
That's good. So do I hear a motion to
Make a motion to
adjourn?
adjourn.
Who seconds it?
I'll second.
Everybody say that.
Two seconds.
Well, let's do it at the same time saying second.
All right, what's going on?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's